welcome everybody to the BTN podcast. My name is Scuba. We have Monk on the other side of the table. How are you doing?
Hello, I am doing fantastic. Thank you.
As always, my friend, as always. So, exciting podcast today.
Yes.
An amazing,
Indeed.
excellent thing to happen. We're going to be...
We have a fun science educator with us.
Mm-hmm.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Stephanie Ryan, and I have a couple of hats that I wear. One is that I am a science educator, and I have the Instagram account, Let's Learn About Science, where we post a lot of activities for parents to feel more comfortable doing science with their kids during quarantine. I'm an author of a children's book called Let's Learn About Chemistry. And I run my own consulting practice, helping people write curricular materials and test items for K through 12 and beyond, usually in STEM.
Okay. What ages would they be?
For the curriculum materials, that would be kindergarten in the U.S. would be about 5 years old, and then through 18. And then I also do some college level.
Oh, okay. Right. Ideally, we could learn on the 5-year-old stuff. That's probably the level for us.
Talk for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I try to do is I have my little sidekick, Charlie, my son. He goes through the experiments with me, and then I put some of the information that a parent might want next to it on the post. And then in the book, I have a lot of information for the parent, just in case they don't know the content themselves, so that they don't feel overwhelmed by anything.
Okay. Yeah, that's ideal.
Yeah. I've always found as well, since when you're a small child, there's you don't really think of science as being like different biological things, like insects and stuff like that. You usually think of it as being chemistry a lot of the time. I remember being given a chemistry set when I was younger. And I just thought, cool, I can blow some stuff up right now. Yeah. That's all that really went through my head at that point. And so what style of science are you sort of more geared towards, Stephanie?
I'm more geared towards chemistry, but working with younger children, they tend to do all the sciences, so I can address all of them. But if I'm left to my own devices, I'm more of a chemist at heart, and then biology, I'd say.
Okay. Yeah, in the UK, when you do quote-unquote science, in the first couple of years of secondary school, you just do science. You don't do a specific thing. And then you move on to being allowed to choose either chemistry, biology, or physics. Is that kind of similar to how it works in the US?
Yes. It's quite similar. So I'd say probably secondary school is when that changes, or high school.
Mm. So what kind of things are you teaching sort of your youngest aged kids and stuff? What kind of things are you starting with to introduce them?
So the easiest thing to teach them is also easy for parents. It's solids, liquids, and gases, of just classifying things around them and understanding what's a solid, what's a liquid, and what's a gas. So whenever we do anything, I'll say, is that a solid? And my son goes, no, that's a liquid, or whichever it is. And that one's something you can do in any experiment, because you can ask them what the first thing they started with was, and then what they end with. And you can talk about chemical and physical changes that way. So I do a lot of baking soda and vinegar, Alka-Seltzer tablets and water, lots of things that produce bubbles for them to think of a gas and what that means and how you might design something to collect it, like a balloon on top of a bottle. There's a lot of stuff that you can teach small children. They just don't need to know it at the level that someone in secondary and middle school need to know it.
Yeah.
They can get the concept across that, wow, something happened and it changed and it was exciting to watch. And that's really all they need at that moment.
To be honest, just mentioning a balloon over a bottle has blown my mind. I never thought about that.
What?
I understand that there's gases coming from the bottle, but I never thought to physically see it, you could put a balloon over it and see it. That never crossed my mind at any point. So I could totally get down with what kids are learning.
Yeah, another fun one with balloons is to use yeast, sugar, and warm water. And as the yeast eats the sugar, they have the respiration, which is biology and a little bit of chemistry, and they produce a gas and it blows up the balloon. It takes a lot longer, but it helps explain to kids why bread rises and why we use yeast in food. So that's a fun one too. I like to use just things that people commonly have around their house so that it's not, you don't need a fancy chemistry set to do a lot of this.
You know what's mad here, right? I'm remembering a science experiment at school, and this was primary 6, so I would have been, how old? Like,
you're talking
10, 11?
10
something
years old,
like that. And this was 2 bowls. There was one bowl, empty bowl, and another, I told you this already.
Yeah.
One bowl was full of water, so you get like a cloth or some sort of like towel or something like that, you put it in the wet bowl, and you put the other end into the other bowl, and eventually the water goes over into the other bowl. I learned this in primary 6, and you're talking about these experiments that you're teaching there to like 5-year-olds.
Yeah, there's, I know in the U.S., a lot of the concepts that we're teaching, we're starting to teach them a little earlier so that they understand it better.
Yeah.
But that activity, I've seen it done with food coloring in each of the bowls, and you can make rainbow bridges out of it, and it's pretty fun. But I think that part of it, it's not necessarily getting them to explain why it did that at the particulate level when they're 5. It's just that, look, this is a cool thing that happened. What do you think is happening? How can we test that? It's like encouraging the science skills, not necessarily the content, I think.
Yeah. I always remember at high school as well.
But that's cool that you still remember it.
Yeah, well, there was like, and you know what's annoying? Like, my memory is absolutely terrible at times, and I only I remember it for some reason as like a one-day event. I remember like these scientific experiments, just a thing that happened one day.
Yeah,
but it may have happened over like a bunch of weeks. That's how my memory seems to work for those.
Mr. McMaster liked to throw in just random cool. It's weird. We are 6 years apart, and we both had the same teacher at the same age. So it's quite a fun thing that we both got to have had the same experiences with the same person. So we tend to have had the same things. So that's nice. But yeah, I used to do a similar thing with toilet roll, and just drop some of the toilet roll into the toilet or sink or whatever, wherever it was, and just let it rise up and see how quickly it could rise up. Very, very fun life that I've led.
Do you just for like multiple hours on a Saturday afternoon and stuff? Like
that's got me through multiple weekends.
Well, the thing with children is that they go through something like that, and then they apply it to something else. So they just keep building on that. So they might take the toilet roll and then move it to their toy boat, or they might just, my action figure actually sinks to the bottom. Wonder why it does that. And so it's their skills of comparing and contrasting and applying are really being tested when you do things like that. And you wouldn't think that, but when you watch them do it, that's definitely what they do. Well,
I thought, if I go back to the chemistry set I got, I assumed, probably stupidly, that if you add all the chemicals together, you would get like a big flame. So straight away I've got like, because you assume like all the chemicals are like mad, crazy chemicals.
Yeah, you assume they're
like
all
that, but
super flammable.
But it's like salt, other salt. Like it's usually that kind of thing that's in it. Zinc and stuff like that, and you're just like, put them all together, it'll be a big green flame that'll just like kick out from nowhere.
Was there zinc in it?
There was zinc, and these are like old school chemistry sets, so there might have been like proper acid and stuff in it. Like really old chemistry sets.
Yeah, straight out of the 90s. Yeah, everybody's got cancer now because of the rubbish they put in them.
It's amazing. But it's amazing how science actually sparks the kid's brain. It's amazing to watch sometimes.
It is, yeah. It's simple too. Some things just like ice melting. So my son was talking about ice in the summer and wanted to make ice. And so I let him design his own little experiment of how to make it. And he put it outside on a 90-degree Fahrenheit day.
Mhm.
And the next day, there was no water. And so he had to figure out what he had done. So, why didn't this make ice? Where did it go? And so then we kept trying different things until he came upon the freezer. And because he came upon that himself, when it started to get cold and rain turned into snow, he actually understood why. He said the temperature was lower. It's still water. It's just frozen. And it's like, that's crazy. I've never said that to you in my life. And you just made that jump because you did this experiment.
Kids are way... the one thing I hate is when older generations dismiss younger generations as silly or stupid or uneducated or whatever. Kids are so much smarter now than they were when I was one. Are you smarter than a 10-year-old? I am not smarter than a 10-year-old.
Yeah, we have Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader in the US?
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
Turns out I am not smarter than a 5th grader.
No.
They are so much smarter than I am. It's crazy.
Well, that's again, things like move on really quickly, and like as I said, this was a thing that I was learning when I was 10 or 11. I'd been taught to kids at like 5 and 6, so like that just goes to show you like how stuff moves on really quickly. It's awesome.
Yeah,
it's great.
You know, the one thing that always used to confuse me was I done chemistry, and the thing that boggled my mind was, I think it was glass technically isn't a solid, it's a liquid. Is that right?
You're really putting me on the spot here.
I was just checking because I might be wrong. I might have misremembered, but I think glass is technically a liquid because it's very slow. It takes hundreds, thousands, millions of years. I don't know how long it takes, but it takes so long to flow. But technically, it's just hard. It's liquid. It just takes ages to flow. I don't know if that's
just
true.
Googled it while we are on the call, and it says that glass is not a liquid or a solid. It's an amorphous solid, and it's a state that's between the two. So, yes.
So I'm going to claim that as
kind
correct.
of like half right.
Yeah, I'm claiming it. I'm taking it as
I call that a win.
Yeah. I knew it. I mean, this was 10, 12
Look
years ago.
how happy you are.
Yeah, the smile is atrocious right now.
So excited with yourself.
Yeah, I know science, man.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Again, I was 15 when I learnt this, and this is the one fact from chemistry that I've kept.
Amazing.
So, could you possibly talk us through the process of how you sort of explain a relatively complicated concept to a kid? How do you... I don't want to use the term dumb it down, but that is probably the most accurate term.
Like for layman's...
Yeah, how do you break it down for someone who doesn't actually understand fully everything that you're saying?
Yeah. The first thing I have to remember is that it's okay if they walk away not totally getting what I was saying, that it makes them think. So that their questions later might use the words that they're looking for, or they're thinking like they might be wrong, but they still got it in their head, mulling around in there. But I try to simplify things down to the severe basics. Like, what is the biggest takeaway you want from this? And it's that a chemical reaction occurred, or that when you see bubbles, it's a gas, and things like that. So I don't get into, you'll see if you've ever been on my Instagram page, there's in the experiments, you could get really in depth in it and start to have chemical formulas and have them predict based on how much I used and things like that. But that's just not important for my 4-year-old, More to him would be, what do you think that is? Is that a solid, a liquid, or a gas? How can you tell? Do you think it'll ever turn back into what it was, or is it a chemical change? And things like that. So I guess you could call my son a guinea pig. I test out everything with him first. Sometimes that's the first or second video that gets posted. It depends. But yeah, so I tested through him, and then in my professional life, I always run my presentations through my parents who are not science. Well, my dad's an engineer, so that's kind of cheating.
Yeah.
But my mom is not, and so I make sure that they can understand it. And as long as I have explained it in a way that they could pick it up and read it and walk away with the information, then I've done my job. Of just making it more available for public consumption instead of just the academic consumption.
Yeah, I think my issue, if I was doing your job, would be trying to work out how much more complicated to make it per year. Because going from someone who's 5 to someone who's 13, and then going from 13 to 18, there could be very huge shifts, and I would never be fully sure of how far to jump from each thing. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And when I think of an activity, I try to break it down into different levels like that, okay, if they already understand solids, liquids, and gases, we can take it up a notch and we can talk about this. And then if they already understand that, we can get into stoichiometry of it. And so there's lots of different ways you can take it. And then you can even talk about an application of it. So like baking soda and vinegar produce carbon dioxide. You could make a little fire extinguisher like out of it and make it into a project for them. So I think that by sitting down and trying to make it as simple as possible, you end up doing that like 3 or 4 times. And those are the 4 different levels you might teach it at.
Mm-hmm. I was wondering if you'd be able to go a little bit back and explain from your sort of like when you were first sort of studying science and stuff like that, and like how long it took to actually get into the sort of the kids science side of things.
Yeah, when I started graduate school, I was a fellow on a grant that put graduate students in classrooms with kids to help us become better at communicating science to the public. And it was something that wasn't meant to convert anyone into education. I was a chemist. They didn't think that I would switch, but I loved it so much that I switched. It was amazing. I loved seeing the kids learn and their enthusiasm about it, and just seeing the products that we all work on in the lab, like being used by kids, like helping write a textbook that kids actually use, or a lab that they actually do, and watching that. And I got involved with some after school programs where I got to design after school science things, and that was fun. And then for a while I went into curriculum development and assessment writing, and then the pandemic hit. And I pivoted a little by staying at home and watching my son more. And so my Instagram account, I just went full in on it. And we do experiments every day, and it just kind of built from there. It was just a change in focus. It's something I've always been interested in, but since becoming a parent, it's obviously more relevant to me now than it was then.
Mm-hmm. So is this like a fairly recent thing that you started doing then, fairly recently?
It is, yeah. I wrote my book back when my son was about 1, and it takes forever to publish a book. So that was a long time ago. And I would say the terms of doing science experiments with parents, that's been about the last year. But it applies all the skills that I've done in all my other things. Like I write lab manuals, and I do it for all different grade levels. So it makes sense that I could do this for parents. It's just a different shift. And it's really fun to give parents the confidence to do something they're uncomfortable with their kids. It's so empowering to them, and it's fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. That is a thing that we noticed very quickly during our first lockdown. Was
almost within the first 3 days.
Yeah, within days, was a lot of parents sort of giving up and saying, okay, teachers are a lot better than I gave them credit for. And that was just things like maths and English. Mm-hmm. When it comes to trying to teach kids science, I can imagine that they would have very much appreciated someone with a degree helping them a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of people have. I'm sure you've heard of math phobias, of where people are, I can't do math, even
Yeah.
though they can do it. It's the idea of calculus and things really put them off. There's the same thing in science. I hear it all the time. Like, I hated chemistry. That was my worst subject. Things like that. And so, as a parent, they tend to avoid it with their kids. And so you don't have some of the easy kitchen, like baking soda and vinegar volcano and things like that. It's because they feel uncomfortable, they might not be able to explain it. And I think that one of the things that's really important is for kids to know that it's okay not to know something and to learn alongside a parent. Because as adults, we're always growing. I mean, I just Googled something in my own field while I'm on a podcast, like it's something we all look things up. And so for kids to see that adults grow and that they keep learning forever, that it's not just a fact, I think that's powerful too.
I think one of the important things. Sorry, I'll do this quickly. One of the important things to let people know, like if you are listening to these science podcasts, is that the assumption kind of automatically for a lot of people is to assume that scientists know everything about their chosen path a lot of the time, when that's not quite true, sort of thing. Sorry.
Right, definitely. I mean, as scientists, we look things up and we conduct experiments to find answers. So we have ideas and we think that things will behave the way they do, but that's why we do experiments to test them.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but when I was in school, I learned science as a series of facts. You memorize the periodic table. You know that these things react with these things, but you never really got into why. And it was just to get your A or your B, depending on how much you liked it. But there's now it's shifting more to being able to explain how and why, which is much more important to be able to do, and to understand the world around you, to be able to know when someone's, trying to trick you in a product or, try to take your money for something that is just not even scientifically accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just to be better members of our societies, we need to have basic understandings of the world around us.
Yeah.
Perfectly.
Oh, was this what you were going to talk about? Right, cool.
No. It was one of the first scientists we ever had on the podcast was, 5 years ago?
5 years ago,
A friend of ours now, his name is Ross Gillanders. He's a
particle physicist.
He's also a physical chemist.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. He's smart. And
he's a friend of ours. We don't know what he does.
Yes. He's a smart physics guy. And one of the first things we thought to ask him was, this is quite embarrassing now thinking back, we asked him how a boomerang works. And he didn't know. He was like, I could guess that it's this happens here. And he had no idea. And then about a week or two later...
Well, this is one of the interesting things, because he was like, I could guess,
yeah,
but I want to get the right information.
He did guess as well.
He made a guess, and he was like, but don't quote me on that. I want to get the right information.
Yeah.
Wait till the next time.
He got really enthusiastic about trying to find out.
And what was great is, when he came on the second podcast, he was like, he sat down with a bit of paper, and he was so excited to get this across. And it was great, and they explained it, and I'm guessing we've both for both.
No, I have no idea how it works. Do you happen to know how a boomerang works?
I don't know.
No.
Yeah,
I just thought on the off chance, maybe.
It's space magic.
Yeah, space magic is how it works. But annoyingly, he was right when he guessed. It turns out that he's pretty good at physics.
It turns out he knows what he's talking about as well.
Yeah.
It's always good.
Even if he didn't believe in himself, he got it. So yeah, as you say, that's the perfect thing of just saying, I have no idea. I will find out. And that was one of the best things I ever had at school, was me asking the teacher something, the teacher saying, I have no idea. Either look it up and come back and tell me tomorrow, or let's go and look it up together. Probably easier now if they've got computers and things, they could just Google it. But that taught me a valuable lesson to admit when I don't know things and try and figure out what the answer is.
Absolutely. That's something that sometimes when I'm filming with my son on the experiments, I'll ask him and he'll say, I don't know. And I tell him, I'm like, that's an okay answer. If you're not sure, you don't have to fill space, a silent space with words if you don't have something to say or you don't know. It's really fine. We'll look it up and we'll figure it out.
And I don't know is probably the right answer to the vast majority of things that you're asked.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Again, and that again is where this mistrust of science comes from as well, and like a lot of adults. The I don't know and they don't like it. Which you should just embrace that I don't know. Yeah. That's what I've always said.
Well, and the I don't know, and I'm going to look it up and I'll get back to you. That the fact that you're committed enough to the conversation and the content that you're going to go do more to learn it, I think is also important too. Not just, I don't know.
And then just leaving it for this.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Whereas I'm probably more inclined to do that quite a lot of the times. I'm like, no idea, and then just sort of move on.
There's the thing, I'm quite opinionated, so I'll say I don't know, but like Ross did, I'll maybe have a guess. I'll say, let me logically think about how this might happen. I'll have a guess, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but it's fun. I quite enjoy being an amateur scientist sometimes and just having a go, seeing what happens. Like you said with your son, trying to make ice. He failed a lot, he didn't really know what he was doing, but eventually he got there.
Yeah, it gets fixed in the end.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your book. Is this I think from what I got from your website, it's like a bit of a character-driven book. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, you cut out there?
Sorry, on your website, I was looking at your book. Am I right in saying it's a bit of a character-driven book?
It's a board book for small children, like a picture book.
Okay. And so what kind of things do you have in that? Is it like, do you have experiments, or is it like is it more information based, or do you have like experiments, like practical stuff to go along with it?
It's information based, but it can pair really well with experiments, and that's something I do a lot. When I read the book with classes on Zoom, I'll do the experiment and then we talk about it. What it really approaches is the game, which of these is not like the other, and it encourages kids to make comparisons and provide evidence and justification for their reasoning. So they can't just say, oh, I think the baseball is different. They have to say why. And the illustrations were purposefully done to have multiple correct answers. So if a kid is 3 and they only classify things by their colors and it's accurate, that's fine. And the parent can skip the next page and move to the next and add in the information when they need it. But it pairs really well with a lot of the kitchen chemistry stuff, like I said, with baking soda and vinegar. A few of the pictures are things people probably have in their house that they could duplicate the activity. I've heard a lot of people say that using the book has been helpful, where they'll use 2 or 3 pages at a time, do an experiment, come back to it a month later, do a couple pages. Like, it doesn't have to be read straight through, and they like that about it, that you can use it when you want to, or you can read it straight through, and the kids can learn some different classifications that us scientists use.
Is it more difficult to teach kids science through Zoom and things like that? I would imagine that would be.
It's a bit tricky.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It depends. So I've had a few where it's really good. So, I mean, kids have been, at least in the U.S., some districts have been virtual for quite a while at this point. And so they're really good at turning on and off their speakers and muting and turning off their video if they're acting funny and things like that. So those tend to go pretty well. Sometimes the classroom will be very loud and I can't hear an answer that a student says. Or like the other day I did one with a preschool with like 4 different rooms and they all called in on the Zoom call. two of their microphones didn't work, so they had to send me their answers. So that one was tricky. But you can, I mean, a lot of the stuff we teach small children is really visual. So using Zoom is really helpful because I can use food coloring in the water to really make my point across. Or mixing liquids, you can see layers really well on Zoom. So it's been like everything in this quarantine. It's not ideal, but making it work.
Can you do like a screen share thing, like showing videos directly on your like Zoom screen? Does that work?
I could. I haven't been.
Yeah. I just wondered if that was a possibility. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so if I had a simulation or something that I wanted to show, like what particles were doing, like if an older child asked me a question, I could pull it up and answer it. But usually lately have been reading my book and doing a couple of experiments and asking very targeted questions as part of like Meet the Author Day. Yeah. Super fun. It's just not quite what we were expecting when the book came out. I thought we'd be doing this all in person.
So what did you have planned originally? Sorry, Craig. Sorry, I'll let you go.
I just had, to be honest, that you wasted your time putting it to me. I just had in my head Stephanie just sitting at our desk or whatever, just having the time of her life doing all these experiments, and just kids just shouting and screaming and not really watching the video, and Stephanie's just like, well, I'm doing science, I'm having a blast. That's what's in my head right now.
Well, the difference there is I'm the one with the chemicals doing this, and then they are telling me what to do. So it's a little less chaotic.
Right, okay. Sorry, what were you going to ask, Steve?
Yeah, so I was going to ask about the book tour sort of thing. So what did you have planned originally that has been messed up since then due to the fantastic COVID?
We were going to do local bookstore readings where, all the local shops, you'd go to each one and sell the book, sign it, and do that. And then there would be visiting schools and daycares and preschools and reading it to the classrooms. I got a little bit of that in when we had a bit of a dip, and I wore a mask while I did it, but then it felt like I was putting my family at risk and decided against it for a while. So then I pivoted to Zoom meetings.
It's been saying this whole thing. It's been mad. And of course, do you feel like, I know with like book tours and stuff like that, I know people, I'm trying to think about like the promotional side. Is it better in reaching more people like via Zoom, or would you be better sort of like going directly through schools and stuff? I'm not sure about that side of things.
I think it'd probably be better going face to face to places. Especially I was meant to go to a few conferences where I had a booth and things like that. I think that would have been better.
Bigger crowds.
Instagram definitely got me in front of a lot more people. My publicist really helped. Like I said, we had to pivot. It just, the world changed so much in that 6 months that it was like, okay, what's the new world look like right now? And so it definitely helped with change. And I do have people contacting me that they've found my book and not through me. So that's exciting to hear.
Well, on the upside, you're now on the biggest podcast in our town. So, yay.
Yeah. Cool.
Yes.
So, and what? She is.
Yeah, I know.
It is the biggest podcast in your town.
That's
true.
Yeah, yep.
So, the past few scientists we've spoken to, they've always had sort of a, how will I put this, a pushback. So, we interviewed an epidemiologist. Obviously, that's big right now, epidemiology. We interviewed a virologist lately, and we interviewed an astronomer.
Astronomer, yes, we did struggle with this earlier on.
Yes, we did struggle with this, yeah. The other day...
I got to the point I was going to say astronomologist earlier on, so I was like, nah, that's not going to work.
Yeah. And
as long as you didn't say astrologist.
Well, that's the
That's
thing.
another one I nearly done. Another, yeah. Oh,
They
horrible.
all seem to have a lot of pushback. The epidemiologist has people that deny COVID exists. The virologist has people who are against vaccines. And the astronomer has people confusing him with an astrologist. Is that right? Yes, it is right.
Yes.
Do you suffer any of these things? People questioning you?
Do they
because
deny
you're-
chemistry?
Yeah, basically.
Well, I mean, you definitely have some people out there who believe the Earth is flat and things like that. So you do run across that. I'd say the only thing I ever come up against is people who don't like standardized testing or state standardized curricula. They don't think that necessarily students at a certain age should learn a concept, that it should be more child focused like homeschooling is. And, you know, there are different ways to do it, and they both end up in a similar place. So I would say no one ever really fights me on anything. They don't say, no, you're wrong.
That would be weird. A 5-year-old like, nah, I don't believe that. That balloon's not real.
Well, I do have my 4-year-old son who tells me I'm wrong all the time. And I'm like, trust me, kid. I went to college. I know what I'm talking about. And I know. And I always joke, like, with my husband that, to have the unearned confidence of a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
That would be great. The Dunning-Kruger effect of toddlers is great. It's fantastic.
They're just uber confidence in whatever they're saying.
Yeah.
No matter.
Oh, yeah. No, he's the best at everything.
Yeah. Unequivocally, just, I am the best.
Yeah, that's silly. That's not real. Thanks.
Awesome.
I wish I had his confidence. It's amazing. Sometimes it seeps in and you're like, man, I feel great.
Yeah.
Are you looking forward to the day where he's right?
He's getting there. There'll be some times he'll come up with something, an explanation that's like darn near close, and you're like, "Whoa, you're only 4. How do you know this?"
Yeah.
So we're proud of him when he's right.
Yeah, and TV shows and things, you'll always have the bit where the dad finally gets beat at basketball or soccer in America, football over here, or football in America even. And the dad's always either very depressed about it or super happy that he's finally been beat by his son. I can imagine there's a lot of science educators out there just like, oh, please the day where they prove me wrong. That would be great.
It's just the idea of like being 9 and then tell your mum and dad something, and they're just like, pack your bags and leave.
Yeah. They found like sorry, on you go.
Oh, that's okay. Go on.
They found like some obscure fact that sounds like it's not real. Like glass is not a solid.
One of the biggest ones was money doesn't grow on trees, and that was the minute a kid would come up with it, yes it does.
Yeah, it's wood. It's literally
it's wood, but it's wood paper. Yeah.
Yeah,
Parents are like,
that's what I mean.
Pack your bags and leave straight away. It's amazing.
Sometimes my son will find loopholes in a rule in our house, and he will try to get out of something. And I'll look at him, and his logic is not flawed. He'll find a loophole, and I'll give him a high five, and I'll say, "Nice try." Like, I admire like the thought process you put behind this, but it's still not happening. So I think we're definitely in the high five camp.
Yeah,
awesome.
One of my favourite things is logic abuse. Definitely.
Oh, definitely.
It sounds like it's logical, but you're like, yeah, I know it's not.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it is, so I'm going to take it.
Awesome. So, in between doing stuff for kids, are you able to continue with your own sort of side projects and stuff like that? Do you do anything else, or do you like? Well, you could tell us, what do you do like as side projects and stuff?
Yeah. So right now, we don't have my son in daycare or preschool. He's at home, so I've taken on the vast majority of his schooling because it made sense given my background.
Yeah.
And so we do pre-K every day. And in my free time, which would be nap time or when he goes to bed, I write assessment items or curricular materials for my different clients. And sometimes I do research with a project that really hits like something I'm interested in. So sometimes my dissertation work, people will have a collaboration to do using it, and that'll be fun. Or I'm a big ethics geek, and so I love talking about human subjects getting the permission to do testing and things like that. And there are a lot of studies out there that talk about those, and I like to be involved with that. So it's usually I'm full time all day, every day. I've got projects lined up, and I wrote the book, so it gets a bit hectic. But right now, with my son being not in school, I don't have as much time for that at the moment. I'm hoping that picks back up soon because I miss it terribly.
You were talking about ethics there. Have you seen The Good Place?
I have.
Yes. There's basically there's a sitcom entirely based around ethics, and it's awesome.
It is. I really enjoyed that show.
So the first thing that came to mind when you mentioned ethics there, and the only thing that came to mind there when you mentioned ethics, indeed as well.
Well, I know people who do research, and the Institutional Review Board, IRB, is something you have to go through to make sure that you can collect data from people. And a lot of researchers complain about it because it's really difficult to obtain, and it's like, well, it's not harming anybody. And it's like, well, it's just like a contract, right? You want to protect both parties and the ethics behind that. So I always really am interested in sharing the studies where ethics were definitely not good, and of why they're so important to obtain consent.
Mm-hmm. So I guess you come across more as a Chidi then.
As a what?
A Chidi.
We're going to struggle here.
Oh yeah, we are. The accent thing.
Yeah, the accent thing.
Chidi?
His name is, in American you would say Chidi, but over here in Scotland we say Cheaty.
Oh, from the show. Yeah. Probably a little more decisive than him.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
Let's go.
That's always an issue that we. So this is a very common problem that we have doing this podcast, because because of lockdown, we can't have people in the house. Like, it's illegal to be in another person's house in Scotland right now. So we're kind of stuck with exclusively online, like Zoom calls and things like that. So we've decided to sort of go with a lot of American people, especially with websites like Matchmaker and podcast guests and things like that. So the issue that we have a lot now is our accent automatically makes a word pronounced differently.
Usually American names a lot of the time.
Yeah,
like Cheedy in American.
Cheedy. Yeah.
But in Scottish, when you say it, it'll be like Cheaty.
Chiddy.
Or Cheaty.
Chiddy.
Like Roz as well from Frasier as well.
Yes.
The same kind of deal.
I said Raz. It's like Utah though.
Aye. Well, over here it would just be Utter.
Utter.
Which is so stupid.
Or Utah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, that's... it's just awkwardly talking about...
So, we used to live in London for a little while, and I got used to different words meaning very different things from American English to British English. So I feel like I'm pretty good with accents, but that one I thought you asked me if I was cheating, and I was like, well, not really, no.
Right. I think the biggest issue we had, still on this topic, the biggest issue we had was the word purple.
Oh, God.
The colour, purple.
Oh, no, see, you've brought it up now.
Yeah, I've brought it up now.
Oh.
I can't remember what it was, but we're trying to explain something was purple.
We're trying to explain, oh my God, to a rapper in, I think, oh God, where was it? Norfolk, Virginia. So like a southern droll accent. So we're trying to explain the word purple. Anyway, we'll get off this conversation. My goodness.
Yeah, this is ridiculous.
Silly. Right. God, this podcast goes down some crazy rabbit holes sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what should we do? Okay, so do you have anything you would like to promote before we go, Stephanie?
Yeah, I would love to share that my book is available worldwide through various vendors, but you usually have a good chance finding it on an Amazon in your country or area. And follow me on Instagram. We post a lot of crafts and science things you can do with your kids, and it's a fun page to follow.
Excellent.